Have you ever just taken one look at something and you just know you're going to love it? Maybe it's a movie that has an interesting premise. Maybe it's a new comedy series on TV that taps into your sense of humor. Or maybe it's a girl called, oh I don't know, Cynthia? Who swears she's a lesbian, but you know you saw her friends kissing your brother, and it just won't stop hurting. I knew from the first second that I saw The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince that I was going to love it, regardless of the critical reception it received, which is probably a good thing. I mean, just look at it. It's like a fairy tale book that you actually get to play. The art direction in this game is simply stunning. The characters are beautifully animated and the environments are a joy to wander through. So much effort went into the visual presentation of this game, and it really shows. I would almost recommend this game for its art style alone, but thankfully this game has a lot more going for it besides its looks. Kinda like me, am I right guys? Am I right? I have a lot going for me besides my looks, am I right? Am I right? One of my favourite things about The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince is its music. This game has one of the most beautiful soundtracks I've heard in quite some time. I'm kind of ashamed to admit that certain tracks, like Even If All Is Forgotten, brought a tear to my eye, especially with how well they work within the narrative of the game. Speaking of which, let's briefly talk about the story. The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince tells the story of a wolf, I guess, who sings atop a mountain every night. Her singing voice is so beautiful that it eventually draws the attention of a young prince who visits the wolf every night to hear her sing. One night, the prince decides he wants to see the face of the person singing, so he climbs the mountain. However, once the prince reaches the top, the wolf is so startled to see him and is scared of what he might think of her if he was to see her true form, that she attempts to cover his eyes. But because she has big fuck off claws instead of hands, she injures the prince instead and blinds him. It's kinda funny how much this story differs from my own life. Usually when I sing, people in the street attack me, but here it's the singer who is attacking her audience. That must be nice. Anyways, the prince falls from the mountain and is found by a passerby who returns him home safely. The wolf flees from the mountain, but eventually feels guilty for what she did to the prince, so she decides to visit him. To visit him, she basically has to brutally murder some of the palace guards to get to his prison cell. Ah! No, please! Please don't kill me! Stop, please, I want to see my son again. That's not actual dialogue from the game, by the way. I just like vocalizing the pain the guards must be experiencing. My therapist doesn't like it when I do that. Anyways, the wolf meets the prince again, only to find he has been imprisoned. Apparently, because he's now blind, he is considered useless by his family, and they want nothing to do with him. It's kinda heartbreaking. The wolf, feeling guilty, wishes to bring the prince to see an old witch who lives in the woods, who could potentially restore his sight. But first she needs to change her own appearance, so the prince doesn't realise that she's the same wolf who attacked him. So she runs off to visit the old witch herself. The witch agrees to change the wolf into a princess under the condition that she gives up her singing voice. She reluctantly agrees and the witch performs the spell. The princess returns to the prison cell, breaks the prince free, and their quest finally begins. Phew. Okay, if there's one complaint I can level at this game, it's that the opening just keeps frickin' going. It takes nearly 20 minutes for the game to properly start, and I think that's far too long for a low budget indie game, especially one with a story as simplistic as this. In a way, I get it. The whole game is told in a storybook format, so obviously cutscenes were going to play a big part in the game, but I still think it could have been paced better. Once the game begins, you'll probably be shocked at how simplistic the gameplay is initially. You can jump, Turn into a wolf, attack enemies in wolf form, and hold the prince's hand to lead him through the forest. And that's kinda about it. Puzzles are very easy during the game's first few hours, but I think that's okay. If you're buying this game, I'm guessing the developers knew you were buying it for the art style, the narrative, or the soundtrack. That doesn't mean that the gameplay is bad per se, but it does sometimes feel like it was meant to take a back seat to that other stuff. I think a big reason the game was received with mixed critical reception is because of what a lot of people probably expected the game to be. The trailers for this game seem to give the impression of a complex puzzle game with strong narrative elements, but I personally see the game as a relaxing time waster, something that isn't meant to stress you out. You can enjoy the simplistic platforming and puzzling between the levels, but that story is the meat and potatoes of the experience. Hell, you can even skip whole stages of the game if you really want to. If you are coming into this game looking for deep and intense gameplay, you're going to be disappointed. There are more complicated puzzles a few hours in, but by then the game is nearly over, and it feels like the title never got to use all its mechanics in a satisfying way, which is kinda disappointing. And then there are other little things that annoy me about the gameplay, like the way the prince can pick up objects but the princess can't, or the way you can't give commands to the prince until a few hours into the game for no apparent reason. The gameplay is flawed in many ways, but again, I still found it enjoyable. I didn't go in expecting a mind-bending puzzle game, and I just enjoyed the relaxing ride. The game is very short, especially for something that cost €20 on PSN. My first playthrough took under 4 hours, and there are very few reasons to replay the game, outside of some boring collectibles. I still think it's worth the money though, especially because of how good that story is. The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince has one of the most heartwarming stories I've ever seen in a game. I loved both the princess and the prince, two souls who are just longing to be accepted by those around them, and eventually finding that sense of belonging through each other. It's a simple story about learning to love yourself just the way you are and not trying to be someone you're not. Like the time I changed my name to Miguel Iguardo to evade the police. I knew I was lying to myself and just needed to be happy in my own skin. I won't spoil it here, but just know that real man tears were shed during the game's ending. Overall, I loved The Liar Princess and The Blind Prince. The gameplay won't blow your mind, but it doesn't need to. The stunning visuals, incredible music, and beautiful story all come together to create one of the most memorable gaming experiences I've had in the last few years. If you like what you're seeing on screen, you'll probably love it. If it doesn't look like your kind of thing, I'd recommend staying away. This game definitely isn't for everyone, but those who click with it will fall completely in love with it.